Hello, this is another OpenSwoole video and my name is Sario. In this video, we're going to go over our second part of our input validation for our API. And we're going to move after our factories construction in the previous video, and we're going to implement our input validation, building our tests first. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to go over the APIs. This is the third video of our APIs with OpenSwoole and Slim, and this is also the third video of the input validations. So let's go. Okay, first things first, let's go to the tests. In our current tests, we have two assertions already happening. I already moved ahead generating the token. So actually moving the generation of the token to a separate method. It was right here because we are going to need this in further methods. Okay, so let's just check that everything is working fine before we start. Okay, everything, all the existing tests are passing. So now let's go ahead and add some explanation. Before we move forward, I'm going to customize this, and I'm going to add a node. I'm going to wrap the trait, the app test trait that we are using from the EchoFart package, and we will add some of our own tests. So I already have this trait ready for us. So let's go there and copy here. I'm going to create another directory, traits, and I'm going to copy it right there. And if you see here, what I have is I have two methods. I have the sPostJSON and sPutJSON. The only thing that I'm doing extra is I'm rewinding the body, which is something that I have to do because of the way this code is built. We are using some conversion between Swoole request and PSR7 request. If you want to know more about this, you can review the libraries that we're using for that conversion that we had in our first video when we were talking about using Swoole with Slim when building our first HTTP server. Okay, so yeah, this done. We're going to come here and we're going to replace this. We have the same method. So if I go here, everything's still passing. Okay, and another thing is in the test case, I have, let me see if I have something else. Oh, no, never mind. No other thing in the test case. So now we are good to start our first test, which is going to be to create a user. One more detail is we add a library called Faker, okay? And this library is going to serve to the purpose for us to create data for our tests, okay? And that data is going to be useful for us right here in our recently created factory. So I already have this code ready for us, and I'm basically load instantiating the Faker library, and I'm putting some default data in the required fields for our users. Okay, that's all to it. And now we can go and check the first test case that I have, which is to create users. Okay, so first I generate token because this is under the protection of a middleware for security. If we go there, you can see that we have a JWT wrapping the endpoints. We still don't have the endpoints because this is going to be something that we will create after, but all the endpoints are going to be inside here, okay? So let's go there. And I'm specifying some handlers to the request. I'm using our PostJSON method. I'm sending the data here. Notice that I'm not using create, I'm using make. This means that it's not persistent in the database yet. This is why I can assert that is not in the database yet. So after the submission, I expect a 201, which means that the resource was created. I assert that the resource is returned. So as soon as it's created, I return the resource back to who submitted. And then I assert that now the record is in the database. Okay. So now we can go for our second test case, which is going to be to assert that the user can't create without authorization. And it's basically the same without the rest of things that are more specific for when this procedure actually works. Basically, we are expecting the 401 to come back when we don't send the token. And then we assert that nothing got created. Nothing was created before and nothing got created after. Basically that. And then we can go to our next test case, which is going to be about updating users. It's basically all the tests are basically around the same few steps. So we have a new name this time. I'm going to update the name, and this time I create the user instead of making, and I assert that the user with that name and email exists and doesn't exist with the new name in that mail. And then after running the procedure, which I use the as put JSON, after that I assert that the things are inverted. The original username doesn't exist anymore in the database and the new name exists. And also the resource is coming back. The next test case is going to be about the user not being able to update email, because email is, I'm restricting the change of the email. If you want a new email, you have to get touch with support, or you have to create another account with the email. Okay, so that's what I'm supposing that this application could work as. And then I'm expecting a 402, which means that there is some validation, some invalid data coming in. So all the rest of the assertions are assuming exactly that. You can look in the repository later. And then I also verify if the user can't update without the user authorization, which is the same set of steps from the create procedure when I was checking for the authorization as well. And then I can I test if the user can delete, and delete is just another method in the HTTP, another HTTP verb. Then I assert that is 204, which means that nothing else to be done. I confirm the JSON response, and I confirm that the user is not present in the database anymore. And the same thing as the authorization for the other two verbs, I'm doing the same here for the delete procedure. Okay, so now we have the test. Let's see how they are failing. Okay, bunch of errors, nothing happening. We don't even have the endpoints. So let's go there and let's start by creating our endpoints. So it's somewhere around API routes, and we have this here. So I'm going to change this name here to have get, to be a little different from the rest. So here are the other methods against user again. To post, to put, I request user ID, and then the name of the procedures. Let's hide this here to be more readable. And these are the methods in the controller. Now let's go there and implement this. Okay, so first things first, let's start with the create procedure. The create procedure, I already have some code ready for us here. We go to the controller, API user controller. The create procedure not there yet, right? So let's go here and prepare our code. Okay, so let's see what is missing from what I have prepared for us. To import the exception class, and I am expecting to have a method validate create user to accomplish the validation of the user. and I'm passing here. This is what I did differently this time. I'm passing here the default values for the input data, and I'm merging. In this array merge, the second parameter is going to be the one, you know. So for example, if I have an email field in this data array, it's the email field from this data is going to be is going to last, not the email equal null here. Okay, so yeah, that's the order. So I'm guaranteeing by doing this that at least it's going to be null. The key will exist. And then I'm just responding with some JSON data. Here's the header in case this validation fails. And I have if there is a password during the creation, I'm going to hash it. Okay. And this hash, I'm using a library from Symfony. So let's discuss this library right now. It's called Symfony Hasher. So let's go there and install it right away. I'm going to put the references in the description later. Okay, so, and this is actually, I'm expecting this to be a service. So I'm going to create a service to wrap that Symfony library for us. It is a type of facade for our application. And then I also expecting the resource because I'm creating a resource because I like the idea of having something that is JSON serializable. So when you call a JSON encode, it works, but you can use with methods and extra procedures as well. So I like that idea. And you just pass the model as input, just the same thing that happens in Laravel side, right? And yeah, that's pretty much what I have. Let's go there and implement our hash library. I have the hash library ready for us. It's supposed to exist inside services. And this hash library is basically when you instantiate, you have the password hasher factory with some default data from their documentation. And I put in the password hasher here. And then when you make, I encode, and when you verify, I just compare the existing hash with a string. Okay, so that's pretty much what this is doing. And here I'm just encoding the password. So if someone has access to the database, they won't be able to get back the password again. And the resource as well. I have the resource ready for us. The service again. Let's go there and see what is there. I have just JSON serialized because this is a JSON serializable implementation, and it's accepted as a eloquent model as the input. And then I just wrap in a data key for the serialization. That's all it's doing. Okay, so, and you can see that right here. So now let's build the validation. So the validation have the method ready for us here. It's going to be private method right after. And here we are. What I'm doing here is I'm basically actually this is still not the update is a little bit different. This is not that different. So what I'm doing is I'm validating doing the normal validation as the other opportunities that we have to do it, and then I return only the field. Okay, this here is here because I want to return only the fields that I'm allowing the user to go with. So for example, if they send in the parameters of this request a field that doesn't exist in the database model, the system at this point here is just going to ignore. Okay, so that's what's happening right here. And then this procedure should be passing. Let's see if it's passing. So if we go back to the tests, go back all the way to the create user, test can create user. Okay, so if I go there, vendor, test, undefined method factory. Okay, so here's one thing that we need to do in our user model. We have to make that model aware that there is a factory for that class. So let's go there and use has factory trait, and then this trait is actually going to try to use something, try to find automatically the factory, but we can implement our own because this is a custom framework. Let's create our own right here and just instantiate the user factory that we know where it is. So there you are. This problem is fixed. Let's see the next. Okay, passing. Okay, next test. Now we're going to implement the update procedure. Okay, to implement the update procedure, let's go there. Have the validation here, validate user input. The update right here, not implemented. Let's bring over what I have prepared for us. Basically, in the update, what I'm doing is because I'm expecting argument this time, which is going to be in the URL query. I'm verifying if it's there. If it's not there, I put null. Here I'm grabbing the body as a JSON, right? JSON decode. So it's going to be actually be converted to array because of this parameter right here. And then I expect the validation to happen right away. I'm doing the same thing as passing the default values. This time I'm also passing the ID and saying that the ID is required. That way we will be able to have the ID available as a validation procedure. Okay, so that's basically what I'm doing here, but actually it's missing this. Yeah, okay. So in this way we'll have the user ID. Actually, I don't need the user ID here. Okay, so now the same thing here. If there is a password, I hash it. If it's not there, I just ignore this step. Then I find the user. In the validation, I'm going to check if the user exists already. So this is secure. And then I update. If it's not updated, return a 500 error. If it's validated, I just respond a normal resource. Okay, so let's go there and prepare this validation. This validation here is going to look like this. And this is a little different from what we have been doing until this point. I have the rules here and I have the output. So what I'm doing is I'm going on each data available and I'm executing, actually not executing, but I'm putting a collection of rules and then I validate it this way. I'm actually doing just the same. There's no much difference, but by doing this way, I will be able to only validate the fields that are there. Because the other way, if the field is not available, so for example here, if the user tries to create, if the request is trying to create a user without password, for example, and the password doesn't need to be there, this is going to throw an exception saying that it couldn't find the field password. So this is probably happening right now because we're not running tests. We don't have enough time right now. But here we're doing differently, so it's not going to happen there. We're only validating what is present, and the required field we guarantee that the null, I'm putting the required, actually the fields that I have to test, they are all here. So for example, if the email was required, we will have to put it here. Not being required, we don't put, and that way we don't validate when it's not there. Okay, that's pretty much what we are doing here. But we put as null the ones that we need to validate as required, so they run here and they show up in the roles that are going to be validated right here. With this in hand, we can test some fields as required, and I'm saying that is null because the user can't validate the email. Okay, so this strategy also helped in this way, because for example, if the user sends the email, I have to test if the email is there, because I have to deny the user from being able to update the email. That way, I would have to implement my own way, do my own call to the constraints, because we are using the constraints right here, right? So then go here and throw exception, things like that, or have another exception throwing above here, which I don't want. I want all the rules to be inside this list of rules. Okay, this is why I decided to do here this way. And then I validate, throw an exception in case it fails, or return the output. The output is also being built on this loop, that in this way we don't have fields that we don't want, undesirable fields, and we persist. Okay, so this is pretty much it. Let's see if the tests related to it are working. First of all, let's test if the user can create. This is passing. Let's test the problem without is with where the user doesn't have authorization to do so. Okay, there is a faker. Okay, there it is. We have the faker now available in the class. Let's go there. Okay, working. Test can create without authorization. I was using faker right here. Okay, so now let's close this and let's test this one right here. Passing to. So this one is passing. Can't update email. Let's see if this test case is already passing. Also passing. We complain for 2.2 if the user tries to update the email. We are not allowing this application. Okay, so test update with authorization. Let's test the authorization. I'm testing one by one here, just because the output when there's an error is too big. So okay, also passing. Let's test if the user can. Okay, we didn't implement this one. Go there and implement. This might be a quicker one with me. Okay, so here it is. We have the delete procedure. We do the same thing as in the update. We get the user ID and put in the request, and then validate that user ID. In case it fails for input, in case it fails for not finding the user, actually not being able to delete the user found, and the successful response. Okay, and here we require that the ID exists in the database already. So this is how we make this procedure here secure. And the type must be an integer, obviously, and is required. So that's what we're doing here. This is the different approach that is actually more flexible to go over more cases. So with this in hand, let's go and test the entire class of tests, API user tests, and everything should be passing. There it is, everything passing. We finished our user endpoint with all the CRUD procedures ready for you, the user, to use. It's tested, and I'm going to put in the repository. You can check it there, and see you in the next video.